Those Days with the Monsters, Part 57. In the quiet of a decidedly locked room, Kirill found himself rapidly tapping his claws against the smooth white walls. He'd been pacing for a bit, made himself stop, and now was doing this instead. He wasn't panicked, just... he couldn't seem to stop moving. Kirill couldn't believe he'd done that. How had he managed to move under those predatory eyes? He remembered the splash of green blood falling through the jump gate and the puddle of red under Carpenter's nose. The blood devil, they said. There really had been a lot of blood since he'd met the Cumans, and some heads without the blood. He was starting to be disturbingly complacent around the Cuman's violent tendencies, but that wouldn't give him the power to move when every nerve screamed at him to freeze in place. It must have come from somewhere, but he couldn't for the life of him figure out where. From outside, Kirill could hear voices, occasionally detected by his translator. These walls transmitted sound fairly clearly, though not always well enough for his translator to pick up on. He could only understand bits of their words, but he had nothing else to do but listen in. So listen in he did. Tzixin and Kazuna, by the 4th Fleet, led by the Moor. Results should be visible by... Kirill couldn't understand what came after, but one phrase was loud and clear. It doesn't matter how slippery prey is. Prey is prey, and with only one ship, what else are they? Kirill's heart plummeted. He knew the Cumans were terrifying, but so were the Tziks. What if he was wrong? What if the Tziks really were stronger? What would happen to the Cumans? Why didn't they take the deal? I would have been fine. If something bad happened to the Cumans, to Doc and Alex and the captain and Sleepy, surely Sleepy will be fine, right? He couldn't seem to breathe. All this was because of his journal. This was his fault. A large and looming Tzix brought food, some kind of leaf in a thick, juicy purple stalk. Kirill sniffed it suspiciously for several minutes, but he was very hungry, and there was no other option. Eventually he bit into it. It was sweet and salty, and there didn't seem to be any problems with it. They didn't poison me, at least. But actually, wasn't that normal? He was having so much poisonous food that was strange, right? Or am I wrong? He was so used to waiting for Doc to give him permission to eat a strange food. Wasn't that, in itself, the weird thing? Wasn't the presence of poison supposed to be the abnormal situation, not the normal one? The featureless room was quietly lit from the blue star above. The sealed door was made of some kind of glass steel, giving him a view of more white walls and a bit of hallway on either side. It was featureless, motionless, and Kirill had very little to do but wait for news. Nothing came. Of course, the Tziks wouldn't bother to inform him, but they didn't seem to have any news either. Maybe the Cumans were hiding. Kirill hoped they made it back to Cuman space. They could be safe there. From Ksuna? Nothing. The Moor. Kirill fidgeted with his front claws. This was good, right? It meant the Cumans hadn't been caught yet, but he still hated not knowing. Lost signal, Captain Gux. Captain? That came through the walls clearly. Gux must be shouting. You've promoted. Promoted? Kirill felt his heart sink. Was it because of the journal? Was the information hidden inside so important that it caused a promotion? Sleepy was glad to see me. I guess he didn't know they read the journal. Kirill's stomach felt heavy and sick, and he didn't think it was from the food. Would Sleepy still have been glad to see him if he knew? He could imagine Sleepy's expression changing to one of hurt and disgust. His chest hurt. I can't tell him. He can't know. Not that it really mattered, since he probably wouldn't be seeing Sleepy again, but it still hurt to think that he had to keep a secret from Sleepy. The mumbled voices kept going, long after the blue star had disappeared from the glass overhead. Kirill fidgeted and paced in his room, too uneasy to rest. His feet were still in those heavy metal spheres, but he was slowly getting used to them. It really wasn't much harder than moving on the Carrie Fisher, all things considered. He was fighting gravity much less, and the suction really wasn't too much of a hindrance. No wonder the Cumans did so well using gravity as a weapon. Halfway through a turn, Kirill's eyes caught a flash of black. He jumped, rather higher than he'd expected, and braced himself for trouble. There was a Tzizik staring at him through the shining surface of the door. There was no conflict. The Tzizik stared for just a second before scurrying away. Kirill's heart beat loud and fast. He had a funny feeling that that moment had been both long and short at the same time. But the Tziziks had looked, what, agitated? Nervous, almost? There was a large white slab along one wall, about the size that a Tizzix could lay across it, or what Kirill imagined a Tizzix would do if it were trying to lay down. Maybe they rested on those. It was rather tall, but the restraints weren't holding him back, so Kirill climbed up and sat on it to think.
I guess they might be nervous. I did. Ugh.
Kirill felt sick to his stomach all over again. He'd killed. Twice. They were dead now. They'd been alive, and then he grabbed them, or stabbed them, or whatever the hell he'd done to the first one. And then they hadn't been.
I wonder if humans get like this. Do they feel bad if they kill something?
He couldn't really imagine Sleepy or Alex getting nauseous like this.
Maybe Doc would.
Doc was a medic. This seemed like the opposite of what he'd want to do.
Seriously?
That was a Tizzix. It sounded like it was close to the door. He could hear it very clearly.
I saw it myself. I know they say breaking the suction the first time makes it weaker later, but that's absurd. Those things are supposed to hold an air behemoth. What did they call them?
Xaimen.
The Xaimen, did they make some kind of void monster? I think I've seen something like that before. I don't think they made it, but the one I saw wasn't that strong.
What did they do to it then? The two black bulks passed by the door, one glancing in furtively before they moved on.
I don't know. I don't like it though. Everyone's calling them prey, but I don't like it. If that thing...
They moved out of his translator range, and were soon drowned by the low murmur from somewhere else in the area. Air behemoth? Kirill didn't know what that was supposed to mean, but now he wanted to look it up. He didn't realise these restraints were supposed to be that strong. Now he almost wished he could get Alex or Sleepy to wear them, just to see if they would be bothered by the suction. Someone brought in more purple stalks, along with some kind of green bulb. It was no potato, but it was good enough. The murmur grew louder.
Results from lost contact at Tzun and Kazur. The more. Congratulations, Major General.
Major General? Kirill's heart sank again. Was this still because of the journal? No. Maybe it was because he'd negotiated with the humans. It didn't have to be Kirill's fault, right?
Disgusting. Look at me, making excuses for myself like this.
He could hear the faintest echo of his clutch laughing.
Of course it's my fault. Why would it not be? Excuses. All of it's excuses.
It suddenly occurred to him why Sleepy was alone so much.
Does it keep him from forgetting? Or does it make it easier to forget?
Who knew? At least Sleepy hadn't gotten a new species killed.
Of Dzixen. Images on.
Large display.
Yes, sir.
The quiet erupted suddenly into horrific wailing shrieks, as if every Tizzix in the building had gone mad. Kirill's frills pulsed red-black, and he scrambled down and to the door. Mother of the Moor! A black shape rushed down the hallway, stumbled, fell. Kirill watched them shudder and spit something blue onto the floor, their whole body shivering and heaving. Finally, the Tizzix scrambled to their feet, wiped their mouth and darted past the glass steel door. The faint airflow into the room smelled like some kind of digestive fluid.
What happened?
The voices in the other room became louder, clearer, more urgent. The confused mumbles and chatter had entirely vanished. Kazina! Tzixen! Show me! And Trizin too! There was a dead silence. Then Gux's voice sounded louder than before. What now? The reply was from a quiet voice, fuzzy, as if over a long-distance communication wavelength.
General Gux.
He couldn't hear the rest of the response. What was happening? Kirill didn't understand the military, but he was pretty sure you weren't supposed to get 3 promotions like this.
Or are you? Is this what he was talking about when he said he was going to the Ravening?
The blue star rose again, shining into the blank white room. Kirill was still pacing back and forth, trying his best to hear through the wall.
Congratulations, Fleet Commander Gux.
Compared to the last few times, when there was a sound of excitement, no one spoke. Finally, Kirill's translator picked up Gux's voice. No. Fleet Commander.
I'm afraid so. Please cooperate with Fleet Commander Zins for...
Bother this translator, what was happening? The star set and rose again. No one had brought Kirill food, but that wasn't a problem. He'd barely tapped into his back reserves, full as they were from atmosphere exchange. He wasn't hungry, he was just unsettled. It felt like the Tizzix were too busy to worry about him, and he didn't like that feeling. Then the murmur turned into quiet whispers. Kirill could catch a few words. "Not again. More. What is it now? Can't take any more. Please, hungry." The static voice from a distance sounded again with a quiet rasp that might be clearing a throat. "Congratulations, Fleet Commander Gux. You are now the highest ranking officer alive. What are your orders?" Read by Good Bean.